and good morning, everyone, and thanks for waking up early. So my name is Fei, and currently a PhD student at King's College London. This is joint work with Danning, Thomas, and Malesh. So in this paper, we did an empirical analysis of measurements in economics of CEX-DEX arbitrage on Ethereum. Right. So CEX-DEX arbitrages are arbitrages between a centralized exchange and decentralized exchange. And due to the difference in liquidity depths of assets and between these values and settlement delays of the blockchain, there is frequent mispricing for assets on DEXs, which creates this arbitrage opportunity. To execute an arbitrage, arbitrageurs or searchers will first observe this price difference. And by the time they observe this spread, they can already form some kind of expectation of how much revenue they can make or how much value they can extract through this arbitrage. And under Ethereum's proposal-based separation framework, which allows validators to outsource block construction to block builders through relays, searchers will send the transaction to the builder, submit a DAX trade to the builder with some tips. And you can think of tips as some kind of bids to the builder because there can be multiple searchers competing for the same arbitrage opportunity, and they all want their DAX trade to be included by the builder. So builders compete in the PBS auction by submitting blocks and bids to the relay, and once selected by the proposer, the relay publishes the block to the network. Once searcher observes the block, lands on the chain, and that trade is confirmed, they execute a hash trade on CEX to lock in the profit. So this is how CEX-DEX arbitrage is executed on Ethereum today. And this also shows like the MEV supply chain of Ethereum. And this structure naturally incentivizes vertical integration, which refers to a single entity playing multiple roles in this process. So you can control both upstream searcher activity and downstream builder or relay infrastructure to optimize MEV extraction, block building. And for those of you who are not familiar with this, these are two biggest CEX-DEX searchers on Ethereum. They are also like builders, SCP and Wintermute. Right, so why we say it's the darkest MEV? So first, like CEX-DEX trades are typically more challenging to identify on-chain than other types of MEV transactions because only the DAX trade is observable. Right? And because the CEX trade is not observable, and we don't really know the hash execution of searchers. We don't know when they hash, or we don't know at what price they hash, right? So together they make estimating extracted value and searcher P&L very, very difficult. And no one seemed to have an answer to this question before, well, especially the last two questions. So in this paper, we're gonna answer these questions one by one. Right, so first question is identifying CEX-DEX trades on chain. So even if like we can only see the DAX trade on chain, we can still try to infer if the DAX trade is part of the CEX-DEX arbitrage by exploiting certain properties of the transactions or like behavioral regularities of the searchers. So basically, we developed a very comprehensive set of heuristics to do that, and some of them are from two previous papers, but we improve with better accuracy and coverage. So yeah, so the basic assumption is like CEX-DEX trades are private and prioritized transactions in the block executed by specialized MEV searchers who generally don't interact with users, right? So the first heuristic is the transaction is private, and it is not categorized as atomic MEV activity or background transaction as part of the order flow auction bundle. And it is not submitted to any known router smart contract, not to any trading bot, not to any address that controls the EOA with an ENS name attached. That basically means the trade is not from retail, and the address should not be interacting with regular users. And at least one of the swap in the transaction is the first swap executed in the respective direction and DAX pool for the given block. That means like at least one of the swaps is prioritized in the block, and the price of execution is guaranteed to execute an arbitrage. And finally, we constrain the tokens to be Binance listed tokens. So we implemented all these things like using a Dune query. So I'm just summarizing here. The query is like much more complicated. Okay, right. So after we have this query, what do we see? So we identify roughly 8.7 million CEX-DEX trades involving 287 tokens between the 19-month period from August 2023 to March 2025. And from the left wall, you see like the daily count of CEX-DEX trades. Although there are ups and downs, it's basically increasing all the time. And in the right one, you see like the volume by the searchers. 98% of the volume is contributed by 23 major searcher entities. And to enhance readability, we just label these searchers with some custom labels, except SEP and Wintermute. Okay. So although we see like increased activity, like we see increasing number of transactions, but we see reduced number of successful searchers, right? So the market is centralizing. Before October 2024, we have all 23 label searchers contributing to 98% of the volume. But like some of them stop operating, so this number reduced to 11 by Q1 2025, basically halved. Right, so now we answer the first question of identifying CEX-DEX transactions. So the second question is how to estimate extracted value and searcher P&L. Right. So an assumption we make here is searchers fully hedge their DEX acquired positions on CEX within very short time frame after the DEX trade confirmation. So suppose the searcher buy X amount of token A and sell Y amount of token B on the DEX. The markup revenue at time T of the searcher is calculated by selling X amount of token A, rebuy Y amount of token B on CEX, net of CEX taker fees. So, and we use the Binance USD mid price of the tokens. So the question is, how do we know when searchers hedge on CEX? And what is the value of T, right? And it is actually very different from among different searchers. They have notable timing variations, like confirming their DEX rate and hedging, because they have different latencies, observe the block at different timestamps. They have different infrastructures, like some of them integrated with Relay or Builder. They know when the block will be published. And most importantly, they have different levels of market information, or we say alpha signals, and execution strategies. So this is why a typical like T0 instantaneous markup doesn't really make sense to be used for estimating extracted value, right? So what do? So for each searcher, we try to infer their hedge timing empirically from all their trades by tracking the CEX price movement. So because the DEX execution price is determined, we know that from the transaction, and the key thing here is really about how the CEX price moves, right? Or how the spread moves. So intuition is very simple. Before you hedge, the spread between your DEX execution price and the CEX price should be large. In other words, your markup revenue should remain at a high point. And once you start hedging on the CEX order book, like you are pushing the CEX price against your position, the spread starts to collapse and your markup revenue starts to decline. So basically, we can know when you start hedging by tracking your markup revenue and see when it starts to decline, right? But we did not really look at markup revenue directly. We look at markup revenue normalized by trade size, which we call gross return. The intuition is like if you look at the distribution of markup directly, it will be dominated by those large trades, because for those large trades, the revenue will be higher, right? You will know what I'm talking about once you see this distribution of searcher gross returns. So for 23 label searchers, we track the gross return of all their historical trades from respective slot time -1 second to slot time +10 seconds. So the curve shows like how median gross return changes during this time frame. And the blue arrow shows the interquartile band. And we find basically 3 patterns that covers all 23 label searchers. And let's look at the first 2 patterns. So the pattern 1, the gross return rise or plateau, then gentle decay, representative searchers SCP Wintermute. And pattern 2, we see the gross return rise or plateau, then drop significantly before becoming flat, representative searcher Kalmar Lucien. Right, so these searchers or exhibit a very characteristic optimal horizon, right? So identified by their median gross return peaking before declining. So we interpret this optimal horizon as the most plausible empirical proxy for when the searcher starts to hedge. Like especially for the pattern 2 searches, like the 2 in the right. So you can see like, well, like it is obvious that you start hedging when it starts to decline, and you finish hedging when it stops declining and become flat, right? So in other words, we just assume like the searcher starts hedging at this optimal horizon for all their trades, right? So for each trade, we can estimate the arbitrage revenue to be the markup revenue at the optimal horizon of the searcher minus the base fee of the DEX trade. And the P&L of this arbitrage can be estimated is then the estimated revenue minus the tips to the builder. And the profit margin of this trade is P&L divided by revenue, which is the fraction of revenue you can retain after tipping the builder. So obviously, like there are limitations with this estimation. One, the single optimal horizon cannot capture the exact timing of every trade by the searcher, but it summarizes the searcher's dominant behavior across all trades. Second, we are using USD mid price to calculate markup. There's no way searchers hedge at mid price, so the numbers are definitely upper bound overestimations. So we answered the second question. Okay, let me jump a little bit. So we see like there are two differences between pattern 1 and pattern 2. The first difference is how large the spread initially is, right? For pattern 1, we see like 10 bips. For pattern 2, we see like 50 bips, right? And the second difference is how fast the spread collapses. It turns out the liquidity of the traded token of the searcher is a main driver. So we find that pattern 1 searchers predominantly trade high liquidity major tokens. For major tokens, you can think of ETH, wrapped Bitcoin, and stablecoins. And for pattern 2 searchers, they just focus more on the rest retail, long tail L tokens with low liquidity. Right, so now we can answer why we see these differences. For how large the spread initially is, limited liquidity creates greater mispricing for long tail L tokens, so the spread is initially larger, right? And how fast the spread collapses. And hedging these low liquidity tokens will create greater price impact because the CEX order book is not very deep. And also like because their prices are more volatile, they can have higher inventory risk. So the searchers tend to hedge faster. And so in this plot, you can see basically the x-axis shows the median volume and the y-axis shows the median gross return. So it's like the size of the trade versus the spread of the trade. And the size of the scatter show the total volume of total revenue of the searcher. And we can clearly see there are two different ways of doing arbitrage or extracting value. So for pattern 1 searchers, like the green scatters, they do large size narrow spread trades targeting higher liquidity tokens and slow hedge. And for pattern 2 searchers, the blue scatters, they do small size wide spread trades targeting low liquidity long tail tokens and hedge faster on CEX, right? And we can also see like some searchers are doing hybrid strategies like Shen and Senna here. So they are like pattern 1, but they also trade long tail, so their medium trade size is like relatively smaller. And so there's like, and similar for Maokai and Tariq, like it's the other way around. They trade major tokens, right? And one thing you may wonder is like for the top 3 searchers, okay, SCP, KO, Wintermute, the 3 largest scatterers. Okay, so why their trade size are smaller? And they predominantly trade major tokens. Well, the intuition is like if you are better than the others, that means like you can capture those tiny little spreads and realize them into profit. And to capture those tiny little spread, well, the size of the trade is of course will be smaller. Yeah. And we also, and that's for pattern 1 and 2, we also find like for searchers, like their gross return is essentially flat during this time frame. And they also trade like low liquidity L tokens. So we infer that we interpret that they're probably not just holding the token and not hedging. Because if they were hedging, we would see a significant decline in their gross return, similar to pattern 2. Right? We just exclude them from our analysis. Right. Just to recover your memory, we answered the second question. We estimated the extracted value with the markup revenue at the searcher's optimal horizon, which is identified by tracking the gross return for all their historical trades. Right? So we're gonna answer the final question about extracted value and searcher P&L. Right, so we have 23 label searchers we excluded for, so we have 19 searchers. So 19 searchers is extracted 233.8 million US dollars through 7.2 million trades during this 19-month time period. And to give you an illustration how big this number is, it is equivalent to the total value extracted by atomic arbitrages from the merge to May 2025. Okay. And it is extremely centralizing because like 3/4 of the extracted value goes to the top three searchers, Wintermute, SCP, and KO. Right. Before we go into P&L, I want to talk about vertical integration because it kind of like related to their P&L, right? So this heat map shows like how much CEX-DEX volume each searcher is sending to each builder, right? So I want you to focus on the 5 circle. Okay, so we know SCP is integrated with Beaver build and Wintermute is integrated with rsync. And we also found like 3 pairs. So these searchers are sending very large volume to one builder. Seems like there's an exclusive partnerships. So KO sending 52% volume to Titan. Okay, maybe not much, but we'll see. Right? And Senna sending 89% of volume to Beaver build, and Graves sending 100% volume to Titan. And now we go into P&L. So this plot shows like the profitability of the searchers, right? So x-axis shows the profit margin and y-axis shows the P&L per trade. And the side of the scatter shows the total P&L of the searcher. And we see like neutral searchers, which means like they are not exclusively sending the trades to a builder. They have like higher P&L and higher profit margin. And in contrast, like searchers integrated with a builder or have exclusive deal with a builder, like have lower P&L per trade and lower profit margin. Like Graves sending 100% their volume to Titan builder sits at the bottom left corner with like negative 300 profit margin. Like I have no idea what they are doing, maybe on purpose, maybe they are just bad at trading, whatever. Okay, so this is weird, right? Because like these exclusive or integrated searchers are large players. Why their profitability seems like, okay, not very good. So, okay. So let's dive deep into this exclusive searcher builder partnerships. So in the first plot, we see the trades they send to a builder partner are more valuable and have higher revenue, which means they are sharing like those valuable trades to their builder partner and sending less valuable trades to other builders. Right? And in the second plot, like we see like their trades in their builder partners block have a lower profit margin than others in other than those in other builders block, right? So basically that means they are sharing a large proportion of revenue to their builder partner than the other builders. And as a result, in the last plot, we see they gave substantially higher tips in total to their builder partner. Oh, just 1 minute? Okay. I thought it was like 5 minutes. But yeah, anyway, so I'll just like summarize it. Okay. Let me skip a little more things. Right, so let's just summarize the searcher profitability summary. So for exclusive searchers, we see like they share most revenue with their builder partner and retain a lower profit margin. And in turn, they gain prioritized inclusion and potentially secure more arbitrage opportunity, like increased market share, right? And they also like they get potential rebates from their builder partner, which is probably off-chain, and we cannot see that. For neutral searchers, like this, they distribute trades across multiple builders. They pay the lowest necessary tips to be included, retain higher profit margin, but they reduce market share. Okay, I just leave it here and take questions, if any. Thank you. Right, just one last thing. If you're just interested in the data and not interested in the methodology, interested in the data or the results, you can just go to the dashboard on Dune. Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions?
Great, great talk. I have two questions. So bunch of CEXs such as Binance have an API for the trades where you can also look at what happened exactly past day or like past week. Did you compare the trades there and try to match them with what you saw on chain?
No, we didn't. So it's too difficult because like when you look at like the Binance trades, like they don't have a what do you say, customer ID, like just so you don't know who executed those trades. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, yeah.
Okay. And the second question is, so I was last night, like you told me that most of these traders are using spot on the SEC side.
Yeah.
And so I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, and he said on Hyperlookit, top addresses doing like on Hyper EVM DEXs, and on Hypercore it uses perpetuals to hedge instead of the spot. Do you know if there's like an additional edge that can be gained from the perpetual using perpetuals instead of spot? And when you talk to the searchers doing CEX-DEX, did they give you any reason for the why they use spot instead of
Okay. So I think there are, okay. The answer is a little bit complicated. So, mm, so I think there. Okay, so we talked. So the answer will be we talked to several sex tech searchers. They said like 99% of the cases they are using spot, and I'm not really sure if there are any searchers like using perpetuals or futures, like because we don't talk to any all of them, of course. So maybe there are searchers hedging on futures, of course. And another reason is like, okay, we don't and and we don't really know why they are doing spot or futures, so they didn't tell us. And another reason why we are not looking at futures or we are just looking at spot because like simply because we don't really have the data for futures. And if you look at if you look at futures, like you plot those the gross returns, like you may see like optimal horizon might change for different searches. It's definitely a very interesting future idea for research.
And maybe one last question. Is it only like two leg, like one pool on chain side and then one pair on the SEC side, or do they also do like maybe two pairs on the DEX side?
Yeah. So yeah, so we are. This is actually one of the advancements in our heuristics because like two previous papers only consider like one swap or two ERC20 token transfers in on the DEX, and we actually find like several searchers, multiple searchers are doing like multiple swaps on DEX, like to optimize on-chain liquidity or to get better execution price. Like for example, you think of if you are trading Pepe USDT on DEX, like probably the best way to do it is like Pepe West first and then West USDT first, right? So we actually see that, yeah, it is true, and we accommodate those like into our data set.